Syracuse Board of Zoning Appeals meeting of September 12th, 2019 is now in session. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the August 22nd, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
I actually have a change. If this is, well, no, it's not a change in the minutes, but like about 4 pages in on application V1919, heaven forbid my name is misspelled. So you can change that if you want. It's the one that says 960 Salt Springs Road.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so all those in favor of approving minutes with that change say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Second order of business is to adopt the resolutions from the August 22nd, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to adopt the resolutions?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Motions are adopted. Somebody's ringing. I'm sorry. The board will now conduct the public hearings on today's agenda. The way we work it here is that the applicant or the applicant's representative will state the reasons for the requested variance and present any material or documentation which is to be considered regarding the proposal. Next, persons wishing to speak in favor of the proposal will be given the opportunity to address the board. Then persons who wish to speak in opposition will be allowed to address the board. Finally, the applicant or a representative will be given the option to make any closing arguments or comments to the board. Following the public hearings this afternoon, the board may make a decision on each application heard. The board may also decide to hold its decision until the next public hearing. If the hearing is closed, no additional information will be allowed into the record except for information that the board may request. That information will be available for public review at the zoning office in City Hall Commons. Staff will now introduce the first application.
Good afternoon. Today's first public hearing is V1922, a continuation from the last meeting on August 22nd. It's for a use variance at 207 Milburn Avenue to establish a warehouse use. Alma White is the owner applicant, and the zoning district is residential class A1.
Hello everyone, my name is Alma White. I reside at 205 Milburn Drive. I'm the owner of 207 Milburn Drive. I'm here for the continuation of the use variance request for my building known as the old grist mill to change it from retail feed and grain sales to storage. We are not asking for any site changes or anything, just we want to change the building from retail to storage, that one building. I just want to recap my previous presentation. First, this is a unique building and situation. With the building being built over 200 years ago for the use of grinding feed brought in by local farmers for resale, this type of retail business is now non-existent. 2, the building can no longer sustain reasonable return due to the sales. The grain market has certainly changed over the last 200 years. And since the building was built, small farmers have gone out of business, with large farmers selling and purchasing their grains in bulk from large grain companies. The neighborhood has also grown up around the old mill, making the building not visible for good retail sales of any kind. The hardship is not self-created. Lee's Feed Store has diversified our sales with many different and unique items, extending hours and offering home delivery. Unfortunately, this has not helped our sales and has decreased yearly due to large chain stores moving into the area with discounted pricing that we as a small business cannot match. Most recently, internet sales have hit us hard and taken a large chunk of our business. I've provided the company's financials with my original application, and can give you profit and loss statements if you require that. This variance will not affect the character of the neighborhood in any way. It actually will improve with less traffic. We'll be going from 40 to 50 cars a day with large truck deliveries to 1 to 2 cars a day with 1 box truck a week with just that storage. And again, I just want to reiterate, I had 2 previous owners to use the business as feed and grain sales, but after I presented my financials to them, they weren't interested in the property.
Why did we bring it back?
Because the Landmark Preservation Association didn't approve the use. It had to go to them for them to approve it, which I believe they've done.
Yes.
Can you tell us what they said?
We were awaiting comment from the Preservation Board.
You still are.
No, we have that. I can read you the comments, I believe
I
they're
don't think it was in
your
packet.
agenda.
Was it?
Chart where they list like DPW mapping zoning.
Right, I read
The
that.
landmark, that's on the, right?
I definitely read that page.
Page in the packet? Is
Yep,
that
so
what-
page 9,
Yeah.
9 in the packet?
Landmark Preservation Board.
Okay.
I see, they're one of the comments.
So you're not proposing any exterior changes, are you? No.
Again, and actually the mill has been used as retail and storage for years. The whole upstairs is already storage, so.
Staff, can I ask, they were a non-conforming use as retail. If someone were to buy it and do retail there, would that not require a variance?
No, that's a history of variances here. If you look on page 1 of your agenda, you see the previous approvals for certain addition, retail storage structure, and parking lot, direct warehouse. They're just using one of the buildings to restrict all storage.
Correct, it's the first old mill.
Different than the approved variances, but if you look at what was approved, you'll get an idea of what was,
Are these all still in effect? These, okay.
I mean, aren't they basically saying that as long as you don't change the exterior, we have no problem with it?
for it is,
Yeah.
yes. They're fine with the use.
And so they're fine with it? Okay. That's good for you. Any questions?
I don't have any questions apart from the ones that I'd asked at the prior one. Really, my biggest thing is the reasonable return. The reasonable return angle is about the property itself, not the business that operates thereon. So while your P&Ls are something that you can tell us about, it's not actually relevant to our decision making. It's whether you can get a return on this piece of property, not the business that's functioning specifically. So I don't have anything where it says that you can't get back $200,000 for selling this to someone.
For retail.
Period. For anything, because it can be done as single-family residential. That's what it's zoned at, not counting use variances.
Have you marketed the property to sell the whole property?
I have not, because we had the 2 previous possible buyers for this use, and they declined, and then, lo and behold, I have a company that wants to buy it. I have 3 other buildings on that property that are storage. So he wants to buy it and use it for storage for the other 3 buildings as well as this building. And his understanding is if he buys it and I do not get that variance, he will not be able to get it. So we're trying to make the proper channels in order to use that building, the lower floor, as storage.
Basically, you're going from, on the floor 1, you've gone from retail to storage. Is that correct? Do I understand?
Correct. Because the upper floors are all storage and have been since it was built 200 years ago, for hay, grain, storage, whatever.
So what is the specific uses that would be allowed for this building?
Without a variance?
Yeah.
The things that are listed here in the previous variances? So we're just we're not really giving a use variance if we approve this. We're saying it fits within what's already been approved.
Oh, you're asking. So this is, there were previous variances granted for specific uses, which are listed in here and in the resolution. So they're doing something different. They're making it more intense with respect to the land uses in the zoning ordinance. So retail is allowed in certain other districts. Storage isn't allowed until you get into like commercial and industrial zoning districts. So you would have to consider the intensity and the increase in intensity.
So it does say
given-
warehouse and storage, but not at the intensity that the new user would have it?
I mean, I would let the.
You can, I would just add, with a variance, you can reduce the impact of the variance. She could reduce the storage without coming back to the board, but with a variance to expand on, to increase the amount of storage, that's why that would be required.
But your contention is that this is going to be a lower impact use of that storage space?
Oh, absolutely. The other 3 buildings, again, are already storage. It's just, we're talking about the old grist mill, and it's just a very unique piece of property.
And are you keeping the property that the other 3 buildings are on, or is this?
No, it's all, he's buying the whole thing. And again, his concern is he wants to use that building for storage and does not want to have it be retail. And he wants to make sure he's in zoning guidelines or whatever.
So it has been retail in the past? There's no more
Over the,
yes. At all, and he wants to use it for storage when there are 3 other buildings for storage.
Can you tell us what will be stored there?
it is, the company is it's a broadband company. He'll be storing cable boxes and, yeah, that sort of thing in there. And I'm sorry, he was here at the last meeting, but he had a business commitment that he couldn't be here. But it's nothing. There was a letter sent to the zoning board that explained what he was going to store in there. Television, transmission, electronics.
And he has no other plans besides using the 4 buildings for storage
Correct.
with this property?
Correct.
You're going to change the interior of these buildings? Any other questions? Thank you. Anybody here wish to speak in favor of the application? Anybody wish to speak against the application? Hearing none, we will move on to the next case.
Okay, our next public hearing is V 1923 for an area variance for structural and parking surface coverage at 327 Florence Avenue. The owner applicant is John French. The zoning district is residential class A1.
Good afternoon. Scott Lickstein. I represent Mr. French. I'm an attorney for Mr. French.
Could you raise the microphone a little bit?
That better?
Your address, too.
Scott Lickstein representing John French, the owner of 327 East Florence Avenue. Mr. French is also present today to respond to any questions that you may have as well. I believe you have written materials in front of you, and those written materials detail both the survey for 327 East Florence Avenue, as well as cite the shed that is presently on the property, which I believe is shown by hashed, marked in the area that is a building that is 18 by 20 feet. This building was placed there, which I would call an accessory building, on or about August of 2016. I think it's important to note the timeline. My client did not believe it was needed. However, about 8 months after that, in April of 2017, the City of Syracuse Code Enforcement came to his home, inspected the property, told him he needed a permit. He went to the permit office to attempt to get that permit, and I believe it was filed at that time. I'm not quite sure, but he never received a response from the permit office at that time in 2017. And now we come to 2019, of which the code enforcement office, or an officer, came to his home again and said that his permit was denied. He was never sent a denial for his permit. He wasn't aware that was permit. At this point, that structure had been on the property close to 3 years. There are, I think in your written materials, the neighbor that this would closely, possibly, with regards to it's next to, is really, has put a letter within the written materials that states that he has no objection to this shed. There, under the city codes, apparently there is a 30% as far as structures on a property. With this particular property placed on the, we have computed, and I believe as well as the codes office has computed, that now there's coverage of 31%. We admit that we are 1% over the allowable amount, which is really why we are here for a variance and why the variance was applied to. We notice on the calendar today that there's also a notice that about the parking requirements, or the coverage, parking coverage, which my client has informed me that he'd be willing to sod more areas which are soddable and plant grass in areas. This shed is not used for parking any kind of vehicle within. It doesn't need access to park a vehicle in. It's really more for storage. There is also a garage on the premise as well. As I said, we don't have any objection from the neighborhood. There's certainly adequate drainage, and I just happened to look at Google Maps this morning, and if you have time to do that, you'll notice that both sides have multiple structures on their property. I'm not sure what their coverage is, of percentage of coverage of theirs, but this is certainly not an unusual occurrence in this particular neighborhood where there's multiple buildings and/or structures on this property. My client has also spoken to the neighbor on the other side of his property, and he informs him he also has no objection. That would be a Mr. Warwick, and I believe you have a written response from a David Osgood, who is at 321 Florence. So basically, we're asking for the variance, where yes, we are 1% over the allowable limit. We don't believe it's an impact on the neighborhood. We don't believe it's changes the character of the neighborhood, seeing what the neighbors also have on their property. The rear of the property is totally covered by foliage, and there's really no impact to any other home, possibly other than the neighbors on either side who are not objecting to this. Again, as we stated, we are 1% over the allowable limit, and I don't think, and because of the confusion that my client had with the permitting office and not getting notice that this was not allowed, and then this building stands for 3 years after it's been put up, I think it would really be an imposition for my client to have to take down this building at this time. Thank you.
Questions?
What's the building used for?
Building used for storage only.
The shed is.
The shed is used for storage only. The garage is obviously used for parking as well.
What are you storing in this facility?
Household? Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, please come up to the mic and state your name. Thank you.
That's okay. Just state your name and address, please.
French, 327 East Florence Ave. What's in that shed is lawnmower, snow blowers, just miscellaneous stuff.
This is residential stuff. This is not a business related.
Absolutely residential. No business involved. Thank you.
Other questions? On the parking, you have no question on parking.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody here wish to speak in favor of the application? Anybody here wish to speak against the application? Hearing none, we will move on to our next case. Are we done with cases? Okay, so the interpretation. So, she'll announce the interpretation. You'll announce the interpretation.
Okay, our next and final public hearing case is I-1925. It's an interpretation for proposed uses versus enumerated uses within a local business Class A zoning district. More specifically, office building and industries also permitted. The petitioner is Salina First LLC.
The camera might be able to see it, actually.
What's that?
The pole is blocking our view.
A little bit to.
Oh, okay, yeah, I might actually put that, if you don't mind, I'll put it right in front of you.
Or in front of the pole. Oh, that's good. Yeah, thank you.
So, my name is Brody Smith. I'm an attorney at Bond, Shinnick & King. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the board today. I represent Salina First. 1 Lincoln Center, Bond, Shinnick & King, Syracuse, New York. The property at issue is 1081 South Salina Street. In order to orient the board to where that is you go south from downtown. It's near where Tallman hits South Salina Street. The block is bounded on the north by Burt, on the south by Rayner, and then on the east by Montgomery. The property is currently zoned Local Business District A. It is a vacant piece of property. It's got scrub and trees that are in the process of being cleared. The neighbors in the community include the New Jerusalem Baptist Church to the south of the parcel. There's a community center and a group home across the back on Montgomery Street. There's just parking lots and vacant land across Salina Street and some dilapidated retail to the north on Salina Street. The purpose of our application is to get an interpretation as to whether or not the permitted uses in the proposal that has been submitted as part of an application for project site review by Salina First would be permissible under the current zoning. The current zoning includes permitted uses of retail and service, offices, apartment houses, and certain types of industrial uses. So when requesting an interpretation, I immediately go to the purpose that's stated in the statute itself. And the purpose statement in the zoning code includes language that says the district is designed to permit the intensive development of land for mixed residential, retail, service, and certain industrial uses. It goes on to describe what kinds of things would be permitted or would the code would like to see there. These are businesses that require frequent access for the non-residential uses. So busy, a lot of foot traffic. That's the kind of thing that the legislature was getting at. The commercial and industrial uses are encouraged and permitted alongside the residential uses, so long as, and I quote, the operating characteristics are not hazardous, obnoxious, deleterious, or a nuisance. So in including this phrase, certain types of industrial uses, examples are given in the statute. And you can tell the vintage of the statute by some of the examples that are given. Examples include, cigar makers, and cigar shops, and that sort of thing. But also more relevant to what we're doing today, carpenter shops, cabinet makers, tinsmiths, plumbers, steam fitters, pipe fitters, people who make things, and they put a cap. It's not meant to be a large factory. It's meant to be businesses where the people involved in the manufacture of goods, there's no more than 5 people working at a time, though it does indicate from the language there can be more people working there, but just not more than 5 people making things. The shopkeeper and all that, I don't think would count against that number. By way of reference, though I know not strictly dispositive for the question before you, but I think it's good to have the context. In the rezone Syracuse, this would be MX3. To the extent that you consider the zoning a clarification of what we have, this would be clearly permitted under MX3, the proposed development. The table of permissible uses include retail, warehousing, multifamily uses, industrial uses, including artisan and industrial, as well as general manufacturing. Manufacturing and retail require special permits, and all the other things I listed are uses as of right. I'm going to approach the drawing for a moment, if that's all right, and point out a couple things about where the uses will be.
Just to
Take the mic with you, it's fine if you take the
just keep in mind that the hearing itself is about the interpretation, as you know, so the specifics of the building aren't necessarily relevant. You can certainly point out if the board is interested, but just keep that in mind. Yeah.
I can point out where these uses would occur, if it would be useful to the board, so you could get a sense of their scale and location in relation to the rest of the community and the rest of the property. So this would be a 5-story building. This would be residential on the upper floors. It would be retail on the lower floors. And then there would be a pocket park, a 4,500 square foot pocket park, and this is what we're referring to as the light manufacturing building. There would be 3 tenants in the light manufacturing building. One of them is a business that makes dentures called Access Dentures. They make precision crowns and dentures. So dentists, send them in the mail or FedEx or have somebody drop it off. Not trucks, not anything like that. And then they use equipment there to make precision dentures. So these are baking devices, and these are included in our letter, which are attached to the application, no bigger than like a microwave oven. These include sort of dental type precision drills. They don't create a lot of dust. They don't create a lot of noise. Nothing that would escape the dental laboratory or be heard in the outside world.
The only thing that would be manufactured there is. Oh, there are 3 categories. I'm sorry.
3 tenants.
3 tenants. Okay.
Yeah.
And 1 tenant would do dentures.
Access Dental.
Access Dental.
Yeah, and Access Dental, as you read the details that was provided in the letter that we attached to our main letter requesting interpretation, it's more like 3D printing than anything else. They use clay and they bake it, and there's not like industrial type air filters or movers or noise or that sort of thing. It's not heavy. It's not heavy industry by any stretch of the imagination. Our request is that be interpreted as either just an office use, which is most of what it is, I think, or a permissible light industrial use similar to the ones listed as being permissible in the statute. The other 2 tenants, one is a general contractor who will have their offices there. That's in the letter ESC. And then the other is JHP, which is an industrial supply company. Let me show you where they'll be, and you can get a sense of the scale of it. This is the elevation from Salina Street. So you see the retail, residential apartments, and then this is the light industry building here with a pocket park in front. Parking will be in the back. So this will all come to the street, sort of new modernism, all the things that you look for in this sort of planning. Attractive in an area that's a little bit underdeveloped, more than a little bit underdeveloped. This is extending some of the redevelopment that we've seen downtown into the south side. This is the view from Montgomery Street. You see here the back of the light industrial building, which is green. There is loading docks there. We don't expect any more than one delivery per day, and these would be box trucks, not semi-trucks, like 20, 25-foot trucks. We've provided a potential layout for the light industrial space. You know, this has changed a little bit. We've gotten some feedback from the planning office in terms of, you know, wanting to see more detail, because initially it was just an empty box and there was a worry it was going to be a big warehouse. It was going to be like a contractor's yard, something like that. And I think showing these additional divisions, you know, maybe alleviates worries from that. The dental laboratory will be 5,000 square feet. JHP, we initially had them down to 7,500 square feet. As we've talked to them more and, you know, sort of addressed some of the concerns about it being, you know, like a mini warehouse, we've reduced their space all the way down to 3,500 square feet.
What do they do?
JHP is the industrial supply company. So it'll be their that things for like HVAC, you know, heating, cooling, that sort of thing.
They're gonna warehouse HVAC.
They have a warehouse elsewhere. You know, this is not meant to be a warehouse, but this is their office space, and they also will store some inventory there because they're going to have 3,500 square feet. So they'll have some storage there, but it won't be a large warehouse space. They have warehouse space elsewhere.
So a general contractor would have backhoes and other kinds of heavy equipment? Would that
No, they wouldn't store that sort of thing. The general contractor is ESC. They'll only have 2,500 square feet. They'll bring in things like because the guys who go out to the sites, they work in the office, so they'll come back and they may, you know, store some jackhammers, like handheld type things, but not like heavy equipment. And so our you know, when you look at that list that was provided of you know, the potential, the uses that they listed back in 1900, whenever they wrote the thing, you know, steam fitters, pipe fitters, cabinet makers. I mean, they're kind of describing general contractors. They're describing people that make things, obviously, but you know, we're all around it. So what we're looking for is an interpretation to allow this, you know, really, I think, what would be very helpful to the neighborhood. I think it's clearly local business district A is meant to be mixed use. It's meant to be some light manufacturing. It says it right in there. It provides a list. We would contend that shouldn't be viewed as an exhaustive list. This board has the discretion to have, you know, similar things be interpreted to be added to that list, like what we're proposing to do. When you look at the purpose statement, especially up top in the code, I just feel like this development is more like what was, you know, contemplated way back when, you know, when you had neighborhoods with mixed use of retail and residential and, you know, industrial. People could have good jobs and walk to work and have it all, you know, have the pocket park present, and which is what we're trying to get back to. I think it's very much in the spirit of of what the code ought to be, and, you know, we're hoping that you can interpret it to allow this to go forward. I'll stop there and open up for questions.
Any new jobs at this facility?
What's that?
Jobs?
Oh yeah. So the initially the dental laboratory will employ 30 people. Hopefully, you know, grow going forward. This is all minority and women-owned businesses. The industrial supply company and the contractor are also having an ownership interest in this property. My client Gail is here. She's the developer. She's going to be the other owner. Yeah, these are going to be a combination of entry level, but also opportunities for skilled jobs for people who don't necessarily have a college education on the south side to get those jobs. And then we haven't identified yet what all the retail tenants will be on the first floor of the 5-story building, but there'll be shops and things that we're not going to be asking for, you know, use variances or anything for that. They'll be clearly retail.
I'm going to ask, I asked earlier, but I'm going to ask our counsel. Please tell me what specifically are we interpreting?
Excuse me, let me just pull it up. You are essentially interpreting whether this use is...
Get close to the microphone, please.
Yeah. whether the uses being proposed are falling under the definitions of what is allowed in this area.
So are there any we can eliminate because we know that they are allowed? Is there one or two specifically that the question is, the light manufacturing, that's one?
That is the clearest one to me, the light manufacturing.
And the it says storage, but you're saying it's really office space, and they'll store some stuff as well.
The dental, whether that is.
Which is not what it says in our case here.
So I think essentially what it comes down to is to counsel for the applicant's point that you're comparing it essentially to the uses that were enumerated as examples. It really boils down to whether this dental proposal is substantially similar to those uses and can be. To me, it seems like a distinction between light and heavy industrial manufacturing uses is, and whether as you've established, this falls under
and
light.
If we say that's our interpretation, the applicant doesn't need a variance. We're not giving a variance. This as interpretation has no real bearing on this project in the sense that it's not being considered. You're not considering anything to do with this specific building, with this project. It is simply an interpretation of what the law means, so that they can apply for all of this going forward, or what they will need to apply for. If we said it wasn't, they could apply for a variance, right?
Yeah.
And if we say it is, they don't have to.
They don't have to, but it's also, if we say it is, then for every local business district Class A, this rule goes.
Yes.
They can do denture.
Any place in town.
Any place in town, they can have these uses because we have said that is part of the permitted use.
Only in this zoning district.
And they can
in
use this interpretation for
District
other
Class A.
similar modern
But
uses to
it's a pretty
say
narrow
this.
interpretation, though.
Yes.
Is denture and crown making heavy industrial or light industrial?
And-
That's basically what it is.
And the distinction between heavy and light tends to boil down to the impact. Like the most common example I can think of heavy are foundries, things, smokestacks, essentially. Think of that. Things that have a very clear effect on the surrounding neighborhood just by virtue of what is happening there versus, what this almost sounds to me is like 3D printing.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy, yeah. And in terms of narrowing the question, on the last page of my letter, I gave a couple choices. I mean, I could read just those two sentences if you want, if that'd be helpful. So, one, the applicant requests that the proposed dental laboratory be deemed to be either an office use permitted by section B32(2)B or a permitted light industrial use pursuant to section B323I of the zoning rules and regulations. So that's for the dental. And then number two, the applicant requests that the proposed remaining uses for the north building, that's the light industrial building we were talking about, be deemed to either be an office use or as permitted uses as of right, akin to carpenter shops, cabinet making, plumbing, steam, and hot water fitting pursuant to section B323I of the zoning rules.
Questions?
I just want to clarify something. It's light industrial is not an allowed use in this zoning district at all. I just want to further clarify Mr. Smith's statement that it would be, you would be deciding if it was similar and akin to one of the industries enumerated here, not that it is light industrial. I just wanted to clarify that.
So it's not
Thank you.
light industrial, but is it have the same impact as cabinetry and tin smithing and all this kind of stuff?
And in the context of the code, it doesn't say they're light or heavy, it says certain industrial uses. Yeah.
Questions?
Just a point of clarification. We're interpreting the current code. The proposed code I looked up, and artisan manufacturing is permitted in the MX3, which is what's proposed for this area. By special permit, it allows manufacturing in general, motor freighter, fleet terminal, or transportation terminal by special permit only. Also warehouse by special permit and wholesale establishment by permit, by special permit. So just to clarify that.
Other questions?
I don't know if they can hear me, sorry. Can you reconcile for me Part A, Section 2, Article 6, which explicitly says that, essentially, I'm going to paraphrase, that the uses listed are all that there can be. And I realize that the code is old, so cabinet making probably not something that's happening all there, and how we are supposed to take that and now interpret that denture manufacturing is a permitted use in this district when it's not explicitly listed and there is no catch-all of, cabinet making, tin snipping, or other similar industries.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the ability of this board to address that comes from two places. One is the purpose statement, I think, gives you a lot more context and a lot more ability to interpret what it is they're looking at. And you're right in the sense that the code says that you have to, the permitted uses are the permitted uses, and as you look at each section, there'll be a section of the code and they'll list a certain number of uses that are permitted as of right, permitted as special permit. And in this case, it's a little more complicated than that in the sense that one of the permitted uses is certain industrial uses. And then there's this sort of rambling paragraph, and the paragraph lists all sorts of what I would say are examples, right? And I think that's different than if it didn't say that industrial was a use. Then I think you'd be right that the code would say, well, we can't interpret in industrial because it's not listed as one of the permitted uses.
I think we're conflating industrial and industries.
Industries,
Code
yes.
says
yeah.
the following industries
Certain
are
industries.
permitted versus, and I think the industrial versus industries is an important distinction, right? Because industrial has a very specific kind of connotation in this world. So I don't know that I agree. But okay, assuming we say, okay, fine, it's akin to the carpentry, tin snipping, tailor shops, whatever. The code then explicitly says, provided that not more than 5 manufacturing operators are engaged in the manufacturing of the product produced therein, explicitly. In your letter that says that there will be 10 people manufacturing dental.
Yeah, so we'll have 10 employees, but no more than 5 will be manufacturing at a time.
But the code doesn't say at a time.
I very much interpret that to be they don't want large factories with like 100 people working at a time. But if you have 5 slots for people manufacturing items, and there's 2 shifts, I think that's what they're talking about.
But if you have five operators around the clock, 24 hours a day, then my use just kind of ticks up versus.
Well, I guess the answer would be that we're not going to do that. This is going to be a 9 to 5 operation. It's not a night operation. And the other thing is, to the extent that there are office workers and things, I don't think that's counted against your manufacturing number.
No, I would tend to manufacturing operators, right? Somebody's just there sending out bills and invoices, then.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So
not the
would there
same.
be 5 people actually making dentures at a time?
At a time, yeah. And then when the new code is passed, then maybe it could be more. We'd like the business to grow, and maybe under the new zoning, it could.
But Brody, what you're saying is that there's just different shifts.
No, this isn't a shift
5 people
operation. I
on
was
one
using that as
shift,
an
right?
example.
You said 5 people making the dentures and the crowns and 5 office workers. That's the way I interpret it.
Okay.
Is that right?
Okay.
Yes.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody wish to speak in favor of the application?
Just, can I interrupt for 1 second? Do you want to go on about the other 2 uses that are also included in this request, or are you done with your discussions?
Well, that's why I asked, and I thought I understood that this was this is what Catherine said, this was the specific use that we really have to deal with.
Well, there are 2 others that they are requesting to be interpreted as
The
well.
general contractor and the industrial supply, is that what you mean?
Yes.
comments, more questions
Did he,
on that.
does anybody have any questions on that?
Industrial supply, we're told, is HVAC.
It's JHP Industrial Supplies.
Your name and address, please.
Gail Montplaisir, Salina First LLC, 321 West Taylor, Syracuse, New York.
So you're welcome to answer the questions.
Okay. So JHP Industrial Supply supplies HVAC equipment and plumbing supplies. They also have an additional business that does technology, so wires and various things for technology. They do, as with any supply company these days, there is not a lot of warehousing. It's not efficient, and that is not what really happens. So what happens is that they have right now 8 people. They will be expanding their group to, because the total from JHP and E. Smith Contracting, we have said that we would have 13 additional jobs that will be created through those 2 tenants and their owner occupants, because they're both partners in Salina First LLC. And so JHP, his staff, what they do is that they interface with general contractors, they take the orders, they then get pricing from the bigger manufacturers, they then, what we call drop ship, that's what most of us do, is we have this type of equipment drop shipped. It's not stored on site. However, some small items are generally stored on site just because they need to be, if you need to have connectors or things that may be hard to come by.
The stuff is just in time.
Absolutely.
In and out.
Right, yes, right. So it is not a warehouse, it is not stored, it is a very small amount of storage that has to occur. So
What percentage would be office and what percentage storage of your space?
So of his space, the probably 10% is storage. I mean, it's a very small amount. I've actually gone into his current area, and that's where most of his storage would still occur, and that's on the other side of South Salina, so it's in an industrial area. And so that's where, and if he were to have any major needs, it would be there. But there are not any major needs that are anticipated with his business.
The other one? You want the other one?
Yeah, the general contractor, can you speak?
Yes, and actually, so it's SGTR, which is Sogon Trash Removal, which is a demolition contractor, and E. Smith Contracting. They are both owned by Eli Smith. Eli Smith is also a partner in Salina First LLC, so it's another owner-occupant. So what they generally do in-house is that they do their estimating in-house. So that's where they do all their contracts, they do all their estimating, and the only materials that will be supplied there will be, like if they're out on a site and they have to come back, they have to bring their jackhammers someplace. And so the staff brings their jackhammers back to the home office. They're stored in a separate closet-like area. It's not a huge area. And the jackhammers, hammers, tools, things like that. They do not have heavy equipment. They are not intending to get any heavy equipment, and there would not be heavy equipment stored there.
Again, could you estimate office versus storage for theirs?
Correct. Oh, how much? I'm sorry. I would say, so if he's got 2,500 square feet, he probably, I think he told me he needs about, 100 to 150 square feet of actual storage.
Stuff like that. Other questions?
So
You came to speak in favor of it.
I did. So we've been working with the city of Syracuse, and we're purchasing this property from the Syracuse Industrial Development Agency. As you all know, Syracuse is in dire need of jobs. And one of the reasons that we have situated this project along South Salina is because we are looking to bring jobs into the neighborhoods where they are most desperately needed. And both of my partners are minority contractors, as I mentioned. The Access Dental will also be minority. They are minority, they just are going through the certification process now. All 3 of these also do not have the kind of requirements for education that are required in a lot of good jobs. And these are good jobs where people that have no more than a high school education, and some probably could come into these types of businesses even without a high school education. These are dedicated, successful business people who are working within their own community and within the city of Syracuse to help alleviate poverty. They've both been here for a very, very long time. So even the owner of Access Dental, he was born and raised here. Eli Smith was born and raised here. Emmanuel Henderson was born and raised here. JHP Industrial Supply has been in business for 37 years. They work within the community regularly. They sit on boards. They sit on the board of the Boys and Girls Clubs. They sit on the Urban Shops Task Force. I mean, they're very, very involved citizens who are working very hard to bring prosperity to the south side of Syracuse. And we think that the types of industries, quote unquote, and some of this is a language thing, in general, it's not considered a bad word anymore to say industry or industrial, because we have now such different means to create things like 3D printing. And so these are very light use. They do not make a lot of noise and they don't take a lot of education, but they allow people the opportunity to learn a trade or to learn a skill that can become a career. And we think that these light industrial uses fit well within standard office space. We, though, have created it such that we have it clustered in this way so that we can see growth and we can also see expansion possibilities for all three of the businesses that are here now. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Not specifically, but I was just going back through the letter and we were talking about the number of jobs in the event that the board decides that this does fall under a permitted use. And it specifically says 10 lab technicians. So are the lab technicians solely sending out bills, or does that have?
Well, so lab technicians, in my understanding of their process, is that, you know, it's really small details of things that they're doing, that they are not. I mean, again, you know, we don't have someone in there with a jackhammer.
No, not. But they're the lab technicians are the ones that are actually making the dentures and crowns that come in, right?
So, I mean, we would like to have more than 5 people work at a time if we could, but if that is not something that, if the board feels that that is a bridge too far, and you know, you want to make it clear in your interpretation that no more than 5 people can be engaged in the manufacturing of dentures or crowns at a time, then obviously we would live with that.
Again, I'm not sure that it's at a time based on the way the code's drafted. It seems that I said I don't know that it's at a time. So, you know, first shift of 5 people, second shift of 5 people.
There's only one shift, and that could be a condition to the. If you want to make that a condition, that's fine too. But you know that we're not. It's not a 2-shift operation. It's a 9 to 5 operation. Yeah.
I do. While you're up there, so this floor plan. I want to go back to something that Gail said, because I just want to be clear. Whatever this board decides, when this comes in with the project site review, if there's revisions that need to be made to the floor plan. You had stated, Gail, that there's 350 square feet of office space at JHP?
No, I said 10% of 3,500 stored material.
Okay. This floor plan has that there's 6,544 square feet of light manufacturing use here, and the office is only 304 square feet. So that seems to be the opposite of what you had just stated, and I just want to be clear so that when we're moving forward.
Can we approach to the drawing?
Yeah, sure, because it does have some handwritten notes on it, and
Yeah. No, I can address this without the drawing. I mean, a lot of this stuff is in my mind. So
Right.
the particular drawing that Brody has was sent in, it was sent to him prior to our detailed meeting with each of the tenants to find out exactly how they use their space.
Okay.
So these were the architects saying, well, what are they going to do?
Okay.
And so they wrote it down that way.
Okay.
I then sent him the wrong drawing. I meant to send him the updated one that shows how it actually breaks
Okay.
out. It's my mistake. I'm sorry.
No, it's just that's what led to all of this, because you have huge indicators of
spaces.
light manufacturing, and that's,
Correct. Yes, you're absolutely
my
right.
initial answer has to be no, because it's not allowed. So I guess maybe you don't need an interpretation of that. Maybe your floor plans are just really wrong, whereas when they come in with the project site review, if they indicate that the primary principal use is the main use and your accessory is much smaller than that, then it might not be a problem. But, so we really just need more detail here in order for us to make sure that what you're saying is actually.
Sure, and you're absolutely right, Heather. And frankly, I never looked at those breakdowns of
Okay.
the designations. I mean, you know, I think of the project comprehensively, but I do understand what you're saying, and it just never even occurred to me that the architects had written it down
Yes.
that way. I apologize.
So to Stu's original point, I guess, that if these clearly just are office uses with a little bit of stuff in the back, you know, and that's a
Correct.
very small percent, where you would have some customary, it'd be a customary thing to have some supply in the back of little items
Right.
that you need to ship out. So maybe that's a moot point, and really the dental manufacturing is what the board should be focusing on. Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to
And-
be clear. Thank you.
No, and thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the applications? Anybody want to speak against it? Hearing none, I think our cases are done, and we're going to take a look, make a decision. So the first one is V 1922, the old mill, 207 Milburn Avenue. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we approve?
A second.
Can I just, at this interim, ask another clarification? Are we offering a new use variance, or are we offering an amendment to an existing use variance?
Well, the application is for a new, Heather, what, do you mind
Use for that part of the
to
project.
speak to that? Is this, this is a completely new application, but, I mean, they have been granted this in the past for, so it is essentially, like you're saying, but it's not an application for an amended, it's being a little convoluted there, but.
They didn't ask for a change to the variance, they're asking
Yes,
for a new...
exactly. A new variance, but you are right to view it. It's because it's for that specific space as opposed to the other buildings, but.
It'd be a different standard we're applying if it's an amendment to an existing variance.
That is
That's
true.
why I asked.
Well, I mean, you still should go through the tests.
Yes.
And remember, you're granting the minimum relief necessary. So take into consideration all the past permissions that have been granted on the property, and the owner's testimony can be helpful in your deliberation.
Still need, I have a motion and I need a second to approve.
I'll second it so we can discuss it.
Sending, well, as the applicant has stated, there's no market anymore for feed mill products in this area. And the alleged hardship relating to the property is unique because it is in a old-time area, and which has been currently built up with homes. If this is granted, there will not really be any essential change of character to the neighborhood. There'll be less, the applicant claims there'll be less traffic because there'll be less employees and less deliveries. And the alleged hardship is not self-created because, again, there's no market for feed.
Yes, I seconded. I'm not completely clear on how I want to stand on this. My main concern is that it hasn't been marketed as effectively as it could have been, looking for other opportunities. Because it's an historic structure, there's an enormous limit to what could be done with it by whoever picks it up. It could not be torn down and put in new residential housing. So I'm going to leave it like that and see who else wants to say something.
So when you say, and this is our discussion period, when you say you don't think it's been marketed adequately, what would be a use that would need a variance that the applicant could have marketed to?
Retail.
Any retail, not just
any
milk.
retail. Any retail. On this expansive farm-like grounds.
I don't think that this is obviously not, if you went down there, it's not a high-traffic area. You had to really look for this street. And then getting down to this building is like going into the past. And it's not a busy street where retail would be active, I don't believe.
And if retail was interested, but the applicant didn't say that she didn't try that. She said she didn't get any.
She said she had two people come to buy the business itself, so the feed business, not to buy the property for retail use, but to buy her business. Is correct? No.
No, they wanted to buy the property
And your business, right? It was in total. Is included. Yes. Yep. As part of your assets.
So, if we're talking about impact, somebody using this property to store items would have less impact than retail.
So that goes to one of the 4 conditions that have to be met.
I mean, I understand. We could, if we just theoretically, if we left it open and said to the applicant, you have to go, we're not going to consider it unless you tell us that it hasn't been marketed. She's going to lose her buyer. I know that's not our problem, except I'm kind of believing this is the best use that she's going to find for the property. I'm not going to interpret the law as narrow because in the end, I think, as Mike says, it's a removed thing. It's been there, the business has been there 200 years or something like that.
A long time.
Yeah.
Before zoning.
1813. 1813, I think, is the year
1813.
of the construction.
I remember it well, yes. Okay. Any other discussion?
I echo Mike's sentiments on the reasonable return and the idea that it hasn't really been marketed for anything except for buy my business, not just my property, and tell me what you'll give me for it. So without more there, I struggle with this one.
All those in favor of approving the variance, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Opposed. Not approved. Next, B1923, the shed in the back, that's been somewhere between 31 and 30% coverage. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with condition. And the condition is that it was already offered that they restore grass. I was looking at the aerial photo. I don't see any grass at the back of the house whatsoever. It's all impervious. restoring grass between the porch and the shed.
Is that specific enough?
Well, if we do that and I calculate that it's not over 30%, because right now it's at 40% structural coverage, so it's 10% over. I'm not structural, parking surface coverage. So by reducing the asphalt between the house and the shed, if that doesn't equal 30% or less, then,
Then we're offering a variance in that area too, I guess.
or do you want to say it must be reduced to 30%? And I can calculate that and help the applicant figure that out and remove what he needs to remove.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So,
Because there's area alongside the porch too.
okay,
So the motion is to approve the variance
for the
with,
structural coverage.
For the structure.
The structure,
and
but not the
reduce the
Parking.
asphalt to 30%,
Okay.
right? I mean, okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Do I need to go through the
Yeah.
standards, don't I? Will there be a change to the neighborhood character? Well, as we've been pointing out, we've seen that there are a number of structures in the backs of these houses on relatively narrow lots. And the good thing from the neighborhood's point of view is it's behind and more or less out of view. Alternate solutions, I think our proposal with conditions is an alternate solution that takes care of the major problem. Site, the magnitude of the variance being requested, once we deal with the parking overage, then the rest is a small amount that's being asked for. An adverse effect to the surrounding neighborhood if the variance is approved, I do not believe so. Again, given that it's at the very back of the house and the houses on either side are not having a problem with it. Self-created difficulty, not entirely. Did you ever find any of the correspondence that was referred to in the letter? The application?
The fact that he didn't hear back, yeah.
No? Well, be that as it may.
Christie, got anything to say?
Just on point 5, is this a self-created difficulty? Well, not, it doesn't make or break the decision here. To me, it is a self-created difficulty. If there was any thought that you needed a permit, you should come ask. And when they told you that you needed one, you should have followed up, because mail gets lost. I've lost lots of mail. But either way, since it's a balancing test, I think Mike's on point otherwise.
Question, all those in favor of approving the variance with conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That passes. The last one, I-25, the interpretation. That's for Select First LLC. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we hold this until we have a revised floor plan and we know exactly what we are interpreting or are not interpreting, because I don't want to pin the board down to potentially having interpreting something that we don't need to do.
Isn't it the case, Heather, that usually when there's misinformation in the case, we ask for it to be updated and revised?
I'll second that proposal.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. We'll second that, okay. So then maybe I don't have to ask the question. Okay.
We're hearing that certain percentages will be office, certain percentages will be storage. It would be nice to see that in the floor plan.
And it's not reflected in the case now. Okay, that's easy. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's that. I don't think we have any new cases.
New business? No.
New business, do we?
No.
Business.
Oh,
No
no.
new business, no.
No.
Oh, but we do have authorizations. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Motion to approve authorizations for October 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor,
Aye.
adjourn.